Welcome back, you guys, to Mustache Ghost. On today's spooky episode of Mustache Ghost, we're going to be talking about the San Pedro haunting, one of the most documented hauntings of the 21st century. Let's get straight into it. In 1989, Jackie Hernandez had separated with her husband Al and decided to move into a suburban home in San Pedro on her own. At first, nothing seemed out of the normal. Jackie was trying her best to provide for her children as a single mother. At the time, she was studying and taking school and just trying to juggle everything in her life. One night while Jackie was sitting in the living room and watching TV, she heard a sound coming from the walls of what sounded like pebbles falling in. At first she didn't think much of it. She thought maybe there was a rodent in the walls, so she kind of ignored it. However, the sound kept happening, so Jackie went to the wall to listen closely about where that sound was coming from. And as she pressed her ear against the wall, all of a sudden she heard what sounded like footsteps coming from the attic. Seeing as she was trying to find some natural explanation for it, she thought maybe there was an animal living in her attic. A raccoon, maybe a mouse. The noises kept happening, and it got to the point where Jackie was fed up and she wanted to go see where this animal was living in her attic. The door into her attic was located above the laundry room. So as she made her way to the laundry room to investigate what was going on, she opened up the sliding door to the attic slowly and peeked in to see what was going on. She noticed that her attic was completely empty. There was absolutely nothing. No furniture, nothing. It was just empty. As she was looking around with a flashlight, she didn't quite see anything. There was no mice, there was no raccoons, there was nothing. Feeling uncomfortable, she decided to close the attic and go back down. She ignored what was happening and moved on. One day, she was hearing a loud screeching noise coming from the attic. She was certain that it was some sort of animal, some sort of raccoon, so she went to investigate what the screeching noise was from. As she opened the attic and popped her head in to see what was going on once more, she felt the same feeling of something being behind her, watching her. As she turned around to take a look, she found what looked like a disembodied head floating towards her and just vanishing. Being completely freaked out, her knees buckled and she fell onto the laundry machine. She knew something was going on, or if she felt like she was going crazy with the stress and school that was happening. She didn't know who to talk to. She was afraid of people judging her, blaming her, and think that she was going crazy. So she kept it all to herself, not really knowing what to do. And fearing that she really was going crazy, she decided to take some time off. She had called her friend Tina, who was a babysitter, to babysit for her so she can go out and enjoy a night with her friends. One night while Tina was watching the kids for Jackie, she was sitting in the living room watching TV, nothing out of the ordinary. And then she decided to get up and really check on the kids. They were sleeping in the room next to the living room. As she reached for the doorknob, the door flung open with such a force. Wondering what caused this, she noticed that all the windows were closed. Then there was no breeze in the house. Once Jackie got home and Tina had told her what happened, Jackie instantly knew that something definitely was going on. Something strange was going on. This was no longer all in her head. On another day, Jackie and her friend Chrissy were talking when all of a sudden they heard this loud bang coming from the kitchen. They went to investigate to see what was happening. There was a large framed picture that was hanging on the wall that had fell and positioned itself as the opposite side of the wall, standing upright. And the nails that were holding this picture were completely upright on the table. Sometime later, Jackie and Chrissy noticed what seemed like this strange orange reddish liquid dripping down from her cabinet. As Jackie was investigating what was going on, she noticed that this liquid didn't have any sources. It wasn't coming from the walls, it wasn't coming from any pipes. She really was confused as where this liquid was coming from, and it was dripping all over her cabinets. She decided to take a sample just in case, to see what was going on. After some time, these events were getting too much for Jackie and she felt like she needed to open up to somebody. She had invited her friend Susan over, and she began to discuss with Susan about all these weird things that were happening in her house and the things that she was experiencing. Susan, being also a skeptic, told Jackie to calm down, that maybe she was overstressed by work and that all of these things could probably be explained rationally. And then as they were talking, they saw what seemed like a strange light coming from the kitchen, where an area where light shouldn't be coming from. It was a flickering light that was moving back and forth. As they went to the kitchen to investigate what was going on, they saw this strange looking orb, a glowing orb in the ceiling of the light, moving back and forth on its own, with no apparent explanation. This completely freaked Susan out and she ran out of the house screaming. Jackie, on the other hand, wanted proof to provide for people, so she went and grabbed her camera and took pictures. Here are the following photos of the pictures Jackie took. Jackie at this point did not want to stay in that home alone. She needed somebody to be with her. She called her ex-husband Al, begging him to come and stay with her for a bit. Al, being frustrated, thinking that she was saying these things and doing these things for attention, he told her that there was nothing, that it must all be in her head. He even told her that he would prove it. So Al went in the middle of the living room and started yelling to whatever spirits were in the room to come prove themselves. to give him some sort of sign, but nothing happened after a couple of minutes. Then Al told her, "It must all be in your head." Al decided he had to get home, so he left her alone, Jackie being fearful of what was going on. Within a couple of hours of Al leaving, she opened up her closet to grab her coat. She noticed that Al's name was written all over the closet, in what seemed it was written in pencil crayon, with the A in blue and the L in red. She saw this as a sign that the spirits were trying to communicate with Al, and this is what the sign they were giving. The night after Al had left, Jackie could barely get any sleep that night. In the middle of the night, she felt like she needed to go to the washroom. As she got up and was making her way there, she noticed the door to her son's bedroom was slightly opened. She went in and kind of turned her head to peek in to see what was going on, and she noticed what seemed to be an old man sitting on the foot of the bed with his legs crossed. She described that he looked like a corpse, angry and completely pale. They would later take a sketch of this apparition that she saw, and this is what it looks like. Some people believe that this is the spirit of an old resident. Some people believe that it could be a demonic apparition. Shortly after, Susan was begging Jackie to find some sort of help, some sort of professional help, because it was getting to the point where it's getting too much, and Jackie was really stressed. After much pleading with Jackie finally decided to give in and contact a parapsychologist, somebody that could help her explain what was going on in her house. After a few days, the paranormal investigators showed up. There was parapsychologist Barry Taft, videographer Barry Conrad, and production assistant Jeff Wheatcraft. When they arrived to Jackie's house, they all sat down in the living room to discuss what was going on. As they were sitting there and listening to her story, some of them were very skeptical, considering that a lot of the trips that they went on in these paranormal investigations, they found that it was either some sort of natural occurrence or it didn't happen at all. As she was telling them the stories of what was going on, she kept mentioning that a lot of the things happening came from the attic. So really, they decided to explore the attic first. Jeff Wheatcraft, being the most skeptical of them all, as you can see in the picture, he seemed like he didn't want to be there during the interview. He decided to go in the attic himself just to kind of get this thing over with and go home. He didn't really believe that there was anything in her attic. So in the beginning, he had gone up the way Jackie first went up, where his legs were still in the laundry, on top of the laundry, and only half his body was in the attic. And he was looking around, not seeing anything, and taking pictures in front of him and also not seeing anything. But after a while, as he was taking pictures, he noticed the feeling of somebody watching him from behind. As he peeked down to the people waiting below him, he told them what he was feeling, and Jackie had explained to them that she felt the exact same thing. One of the investigative team members told him, "Why don't you try taking pictures from behind you, aiming the camera from your back and taking the pictures?" He agreed, but this time Jeff would go completely into the attic and then take the pictures. At the time, Al was staying with Jackie to kind of watch the kids as this investigation was happening. Al was sitting in the bed with his son, and he heard this whisper coming from behind him, "You need to leave." Within hearing that whisper, he heard a loud scream coming from the attic. As Al ran to the laundry, he noticed the investigative team and Jackie looking up at a terrified Jeff trying to rush out of the attic. His eyes were completely wide open as if he saw a ghost. His face looked like the face of complete terror. During the interview conducted in 1992, Jeff recalls the events what happened to him.
Okay, why did you go up to the attic in the first place?
Jackie Hernandez had told us about the disembodied head in the attic. I just wanted to go up to see if I could see anything at all. I took some photos the first time I went upstairs. Now these photos were taken like I would normally take photos, just straight on, straight ahead. I went downstairs and we were talking downstairs for a while, and one of the gentlemen, I think it was Barry Taft, said, "Why don't you take some photos behind you?" In other words, with the lens behind you. So I figured, okay, let's try that. I went upstairs. I started clicking off some photos. It was dark, totally dark, so it was like a time exposure thing. I fired first, second, and just as I fired into the third frame, something pulled this camera from my hands. I had it over my shoulder like this, firing. Something just pulled the whole camera out. Then, at that particular moment, I went downstairs just as fast as you could imagine.
Did you feel, a force? It wasn't just like knocking it out of your hands. It was being pulled out of your hands?
It's just like someone would take the lens barrel of the camera and grab a hold of it and just pull it out. That's how it felt. That's exactly how it felt. I was shocked at that point. I went downstairs immediately. And then you know how you get your adrenaline up. I'm down there and I'm thinking, expensive camera. I'm going back up to get this thing. That's kind of the first thing I thought, you know. I go back up there with lights this time, with a flashlight. I don't see my camera in the position that I was. I look back in the corner. All of a sudden, I see just the lens sitting there in the corner of the attic. And I'm looking around in the corner, in the other corner of the attic, 15 feet away, 15 or 20 feet away, I don't remember exactly, was the body of the camera lying upside down with the lens port laying straight down into a box. You know, one of those boxes of grapes or cherries, you know, just an old crate that was in the attic. The camera was upside down, lens port down, laying inside that box. And the lens was over 15 feet away. Whatever had taken this from my hands had separated the lens from the body of the camera.
In the following clip, you see Jackie sitting in the laundry room with the investigative team, when out of nowhere you could hear shuffling noises as if there were footsteps coming from the attic.
What happened? It's something grabbed that out of my hand. I'm not kidding, something grabbed the whole thing out of my hand. Just now. It grabbed the whole thing out of my hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hear it? Hear it?
It's walking back and forth up there.
It is walking down.
Yes.
Quiet, everyone. Shh, quiet.
And near the end of this investigation, Barry Conrad and Jeff Wheatcraft decided to go into the attic one last time to see what was going on, take some more pictures. As they were up there, they heard what sounded like a distinct snapping noises 3 times. And they knew something bad was going to happen. They had carried a light with them. This light cut out and it was completely dark. Barry turned around immediately and started running for the exit, while Jeff was behind him. As he turned around to run for the exit, he heard a scream behind him. He didn't know what was going on. As he made his way out, he realized that Jeff wasn't behind him anymore. So Barry had taken his camera, considering the other light wasn't working, to figure out where Jeff had gone. He was taking pictures all over the attic to figure out where Jeff was. As he was taking pictures, he noticed Jeff was being hung by a string on one of the beams of the attic through a nail. He quickly ran to Jeff to cut him loose. Jeff explained that he didn't know what was going on, that after those 3 snaps, he completely blacked out. He doesn't recall that moment of being hung. Both of the investigative team made their way down, and they figured this is too dangerous. This whatever this spirit was, whatever this entity was trying to kill them and was trying to harm them. This was the last straw for Jackie. She decided that night to pack her things and leave the house for good. She would never return to it after that. Anyways, I think this is it for today, guys. I'd really love to hear your opinion. What do you think, if this was all a hoax, or if it was real, if it was demonic, or if it was actually a spirit living with Jackie? Let me know in the comments and description below. Also, make sure to subscribe. That is all. Thank you so much for staying tuned in to Mustache Ghost. Be careful of the evil in your house. Boo.